welcome back to another episode of HITLAB's Women Health Tech Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am today's host, Vandana Yadav, Assistant Director for Research at HITLAB. Without further ado, I would like to welcome our guest for today, Amy West. As of this week, Amy has just been appointed as the Principal Director for Advisory Services at HITLAB. Welcome to HITLAB team, Amy, and welcome to Women Health Tech Wednesdays.
Thank you so much. I am super excited to be here. I've had so many years of getting to partner and work with HITLAB and the team here through the work that I did at Novo Nordisk. And now I've had the opportunity to finally make the transition to be a full-time team member of HITLAB. And I could not be happier.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, why don't we start with a little bit of your background, like your professional background and, how it has prepared you for the role at HITLAB?
Sure. So I've been in the pharma space for well over 25 years now. And I started when I was about 10. So, still early in my career. But I've primarily been in the marketing and commercial space throughout most of that career. The last 5 years or so is where I started to really get into more of the health innovation space as we think about digital health and technology and digital and data and its ability to support our customers, our patients with beyond the pill potential. And other ways that we can apply that type of innovation to improve health outcomes and create better experiences. And, it's been a wonderful experience. And, so much is changing so quickly in healthcare, particularly in light of the technology. And as we know, in across many industries, digital has really transformed all the other spaces, whether it's retail, financial services, travel, leisure, what have you. Healthcare has been sort of the last space, but it's really obviously just been skyrocketing as we look at the investments in this space and the potential that we see in this space. And I have really enjoyed getting to experience and understand that area of opportunity from a pharma perspective, which has been wonderful. But now I'm really interested in really kind of expanding into other areas beyond maybe a specific product portfolio area or a specific therapeutic area to many other opportunities that we will have through the work that we do at the HITLAB. And really being on that cutting edge of a lot of where these technologies and these innovations can take us and how they can disrupt our current healthcare ecosystem that I think we can all agree needs some significant change if we're going to really see improved outcomes and, better cost management and better experiences overall.
Well, totally agreed, and super excited to hear all this. What personally interests you about women's health and like maybe your previous experience or previous role in healthcare industry? How has everything which has happened so far in your career shaped your understanding of this field?
Sure. So first and foremost, I think I am a female and I am a patient as well at the end of the day. And, I want to make sure that I can be as healthy as possible to have a good life, to support my family and friends, and to be able to work in this vibrant community like with the HITLAB. And in order to do that, I have to make sure that I'm healthy and taking care of myself. And so I think it's really important that I'm on top of what's going on and what are when I think about family history and sort of disease states or issues that women can have throughout the course of their lives, and knowing that a lot of the specific needs when it comes to women's health have not necessarily been directly addressed.
Right.
When you think about how hormones impact a woman's body from early on, from birth through adolescence, through childbearing years to menopause and postmenopause and into the aging space, we don't really have a really good understanding of the impact of how those hormones are affecting the different disease states. And obviously, when we think about women's health, typically think about reproductive health and fertility and things like that. And there's been a lot of advancement, especially in the fertility space. But we don't really think about how, what are the differences between men and women as it relates to diabetes, cardiovascular disease,
Right.
autoimmune diseases. And we know that women tend to be impacted more severely negatively with cardiovascular disease and autoimmune diseases in the menopause and postmenopausal areas, but we just don't have a lot of understanding about that. So the therapies, the treatments have been discovered and brought to the market based primarily on the male physiology, the male biology, because most clinical trials up until the early 90s were primarily male specimens or male candidates or participants, including down to the lab rats. So there's been a huge gap there of understanding what's happening with women's health and women's bodies. And there's a huge opportunity to better understand that, especially as we think about the opportunities that we have with technology, digital, and data to accelerate understanding and the clinical trials, the ability to, apply these to women's health specifically. And there's also a lot of investment from the federal government included going into this area of women's health because it's been such a gap area. But where there's a gap, there's always an opportunity. So it's an area I'm super passionate about.
Totally. Yeah, I totally agree. If we look at digital health solutions for women health, most of them are focused around fertility or reproductive care, but nobody's talking much about menopause or endometriosis, or even, as you mentioned, how patient outcomes vary based on gender in terms of chronic diseases as well, or representation in clinical trials for that matter. So yeah, these are very important points that you've brought up. Thank you.
I also, just as a note too, I also think it's a huge opportunity to focus this innovation in that prevention space as well. Because when we think about specific, let's say cancers, oncology areas for women's health, whether it's ovarian cancer, uterine cancer, there is no sort of diagnostic for those cancers that, if caught early, are very treatable. But usually by the time they're caught, the symptoms tend to just be bleeding.
Yeah.
You go in and then you go through the whole process. At that point in time, the cancer tends to be more aggressive and more advanced. And when we think about precision medicine, genomics, those areas of opportunity, I think that we might be able to better understand people who are at risk. I mean, we think about breast cancer, the BRCA gene has been identified as a marker. I think there's a lot of opportunity to find these early markers in these other areas to, again, support more of a preventative approach versus, a treatment and sort of, ongoing management approach.
Right. That's true. And even if we talk about mental health, things like postpartum depression, we have just started to take them seriously, like comparatively very recently.
Yeah.
Many times earlier, women won't even recognize they have this and they're struggling through something. But I'm happy, now companies are coming up in this area and people are having a diverse approach to women health and, improving outcomes overall. So that's wonderful.
Absolutely.
And could you tell us a little bit about, some of your key projects or initiatives that you have led in the past that you believe are, super relevant for this new role?
Sure. So when I think about my pharmaceutical career, I spent a lot of time in the marketing and commercial space as well as innovation. At the core of it, which is I think really one of the key foundational reasons why there's been a great connection with HITLAB, is that I've always been very anchored in a patient-centric approach to the interventions, the problem solving, and how can we position a product to better meet the needs of a customer and make it easier for them to access and use so that they can have a better outcome. And that anchoring in really what is the patient's problem to solve, and how can we think about the patient as a person versus just a patient, understand them holistically, understand them beyond their clinical data points. And who are they? How are they living their lives? And how can we support them where they are versus making them, kind of adhere to whatever the clinic setting is doing. And I think that's a lot of the approach that the HITLAB is taking, and this idea of trying to create more democratization of healthcare and more access to healthcare globally, not just in the United States, which is another thing I'm so excited about because it's just got such a huge global reach. But I think that, that sort of that foundational philosophy of really putting the end user, the patient first, and thinking about them as a human being and not just a sick person is really important. But then, that approach I took is what I applied to the business side, which was strategic planning, whether it was planning 5 years out for the organization or planning for the next 12 months.
Mhm.
And what is the roadmap for that? And laying all of that out, using a systematic approach to create a strategy, but then also the playbook to execute and successfully execute. And so that business rigor, I think, is something that I can bring to the organization too, to support our members, our customers, and the like. And then, finally, the last 5 years while I'm at Novo Nordisk, I was leading we had an internal innovation incubator, a lab, and where we actually did a lot of test and learn of different innovative solutions that were all anchored on what is the customer's problem to solve, and thinking beyond the pill. Really, obviously, if you were to go to a brand team and ask them, what is your patient's biggest problem? What is their biggest pain point? And a lot of times they're going to tell you, it's the cost of the drug, which is very real and very much a problem and a hurdle. And so a way to solve for that would be to provide a copay assistance or to offset, a coupon, or we would call them copay cards, to offset the cost of the drug so that it was more affordable. We also have, and as all pharma does, they also have a full patient support program that if you qualify financially, you can get the product for free. Again, it's a problem, but this is where I would argue, well, that's a problem, but that's not the root cause of the problem. Because there are people that can't even get to the doctor to get a diagnosis, to get a product or a prescription that they can't afford. So you're steps removed from the root cause problem. And so my team was really focused on what is that root cause problem and how do we solve for that? And that's where we believe that, again, these innovative approaches through technology, digital data, sensors, wearables, the Internet of Things, AI, machine learning, how can we leverage these really powerful new opportunities that we have to create a way to solve for the root cause problem so that the person can actually get access to the medication and then ultimately be able to, to get it and cover the cost of the product. But that innovation approach, there's a methodology to that as well. I mean, innovation, I think a lot of times you hear that word and it's kind of become like a buzzword, but people think that you just kind of, it comes out of the ether, like, oh, you're off playing in the clouds. No, there's actually a real process and structure to it. And, it's this, the discovery, the test and learn, the rapid iterations, the design thinking methodologies, the lean, the agile approaches to advance and test and pivot as you need to get to a minimum viable product that you can then test and market and then potentially, hopefully, get to scale. And so I did a lot of that, and we actually had some nice successes with some scalable solutions that are actually in market today. And so I have that experience of understanding how to get to the root cause. What is the root issue? What is the root problem we're trying to solve for? And making sure that we're truly solving for a customer problem and not a business problem. Because those two things can be at odds with each other at times. And at the end of the day, you've obviously got to get to the place where you've got the sweet spot of you've identified that there's a customer desirability component to it.
Mm-hmm.
there is an actual feasibility component that you can actually do this, whether it's technology or something else, you can actually do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there has to be the viability. There has to be the business viability. Those three things need to come together in order to really have a truly viable market solution. And so I think that approach and that connecting of the values across these areas is another aspect and perspective and level of experience that I can bring to the organization to support a lot of our member companies and the startups, as well as even some more mature organizations.
Right. No, that's fantastic. That's absolutely incredible. And I totally agree with you. As an industry, we are now moving more towards practical implementation of patient centricity and empathy driven healthcare rather than just being on paper. That, shift from volume based to value based healthcare is now beginning to happen more in the real world. And we're excited to see how folks, as passionate as you are driving it from the core and actually making significant impact on patient outcomes.
Well, and just to add to that, I mean that the evidence component, which is really the heart of what the HITLAB is has is doing for the community, but the evidence generation is critical, and it ties into that value chain. It's
Mhm.
not enough to say, oh, we think there's a problem out here, we know there's a problem, and we think we have a good solution for it, because you might have all those things, but at the end of the day, if you can't validate that you can, number one, actually do it, and then number two, that it is creating a value that somebody is willing to pay for, or you know there's got to be a value exchange there in order for something to really be scalable and have that future. And so a lot of the work that obviously the HIT Lab is doing in your organization with the research is supporting that evidence generation, which is critical in many aspects, but in particular with the value-based care decisions that are being made in the industry.
Right. No, totally. Evidence generation is critical not just for having more credibility around your solution in terms of, convincing relevant parties, whether these are investors, your customers, but also many times to learn better about your target user group and, to refine your solutions better.
Yeah.
Certainly, we are very excited to do that at HitLab. We deeply enjoy that. But another very important aspect for successful adoption and implementation of any solution is the right relationship with different key stakeholders around the particular solution we are talking about. So, what sort of strategies do you use to build those relationships with stakeholders in the digital health ecosystem?
Sure. So, really at the end of the day, it's all about collaboration and networking. And we're at this juncture, I think, in healthcare, again, coming from the pharma space for a long time, the traditional model in pharma across the board was we discover it and we build it ourselves. We bring it to market ourselves. We protect our IP. We don't really partner to do that. There were some partnerships, but it really was very organic, and it was very insular in a lot of ways, which worked really well, and it was not a bad thing. But as we are seeing things evolve and change, particularly with this acceleration due to the technology and the innovation in that space, you can't do it alone anymore. You really need to collaborate. And that's where there are huge opportunities with the big pharma, with the smaller startups, and leveraging those areas of expertise, the agility with the ability to have a lot of resources. How can you combine that to accelerate a very novel and innovative solution that might not have been generated from the heavy hitter, because they're just not in that space. And so it really is about networking. So these types of events, industry events, the HIT Lab, again, to shameless plug, the upcoming symposium in December, things like the different challenges, the Women's Health Tech Initiative, and those challenges, those events are critical for bringing the different players together, the big players, the mid-sized players, the small players, the startups,
Mhm.
to network and potentially collaborate. So it's really important in this space that you're talking, you're collaborating, you're having the conversations, you're brainstorming, and potentially creating an alliance and a partnership that you can then take into market that wouldn't have come on its own or from one entity.
Right, right. No, totally agreed on that. And when we talk about the notion of innovation, and when we see the digital health solutions, most of the solutions, or let's say comparatively, a very high number of solutions are patient-oriented, and very few are made for healthcare providers. So, what do you think about, balancing innovation with practical needs and constraints of healthcare providers and patients?
So I think at the end of the day, healthcare is an ecosystem of different stakeholders. They have to work together. So it's really how can we pull together or connect together those innovative offerings so that there's creating, better access, ease of use, better insight to what's happening in a more efficient way, where there's like remote patient monitoring or improved management of the administrative processes and things like that. And right now, I think we are seeing a lot of pockets, like you said, like there are companion apps for the patient. There are there are the administrative portals for the health systems. There are different sort of ways that technology and innovation is being used to support these different players, but they aren't necessarily all synced up and synergized yet. And I think the more we can move into that space, the better off we're going to be. But you know, it's it takes it's a bit of a crawl to walk type of a thing right now. It's still kind of early stages, but at the end of the day, these disparate sort of innovations need to be able to coordinate and communicate together efficiently and seamlessly in order to really bring the greatest benefit across the board. And people have to understand how to use a technology, because onboarding to something new isn't easy, and it takes time and effort to do that. So it is something that is a challenge, but I think we're making great progress in that direction. But faster is always better. So hopefully we can make that happen.
Awesome. And then my next question would be, how do you ensure that voices of, women and patients are effectively represented in advisory services?
Well, I think that one of the great things that HITLAB is doing is we have the Women's Health Tech Initiative, where it is specifically focused on how do we support greater innovation in the digital health and technology space, again, specifically for women's health. And there's been a really great network existing and a lot of outreach going on to prioritize focus in this gap area for reasons we talked about earlier in the conversation. But also, shining a light on the fact that there's a lot of grant money, investment opportunity that's going on right now that I think people aren't necessarily aware of. And so I think I saw a statistic like over the next 5 years, they believe that the women's health tech space is going to be worth like $57 billion. I mean, 5 years is nothing. And so for the innovators that are out there, this is an area of huge need and opportunity. And the HIT Lab is doing what it can to really start to shine a light on that and bring these startups and these early stage organizations together to showcase what they're doing and provide areas to provide a showcase for investors to come and support them and work together and do that collaboration and potentially work together to bring these things to market faster.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that. And I guess we are almost on time. So my last question would be, what leadership qualities do you believe are essential for driving success in your new role?
I think that number one, like I said before, it's collaboration, it's open conversation, and a willingness to work together. I think when you end up with organizations that have silos, territories, this is my space, it's not your space, that's going to be detrimental in the end of the day.
Right.
And that's why, I love an organization like HITLAB. It's really about bringing people together and collaborating. There's very few, you very rarely hear no. in this organization. It's about how do we make this work? How can we come together? How can we be better together?
Right.
And so that mindset is really important. And also keeping an open mind. Don't be, not shutting people down. And how can we figure out a way to move something forward rather than shutting it down?
Right.
So I think that's really kind of at the core of it. And then again, of course, always being focused and anchoring everything in your end customer's need. And primarily in the healthcare space, that is the patient. We think about them as a human being first so that we can solve for their problems. And that's another really, obviously, a key reason why, this organization, as well as many others, are in existence.
Well, that was absolutely amazing, Amy. So thank you so much for all your answers today and joining us for this session. And I would also like to thank all our attendees for this wonderful session. I hope you all enjoyed it, and we really hope to see you next time. Also, a special thanks to all our sponsors,